Hello everyone! I was thinking of doing another philosophy video. I've made one looking at humanity from a more evolutionary perspective, and I was thinking about doing another video like that, where I just look at a philosophical question from an evolutionary perspective and see if we can answer it through that lens. So, when you look at people as a whole, you have the people who can be classified as good, the people who actually care about other people, and you have the people who can be classified as evil, who either only care about themselves and couldn't really care less what happens to other people, or they actually enjoy hurting people. The question is, why is there such a range of how good or how evil people are within humanity? First, I want to talk about evil or selfishness. First of all, of course, there are basically no species who care about other species except us. Sometimes, we can care about animals, whereas most species don't. They don't care about other species, they only care about their own species. They don't feel guilty for killing their prey, whereas some people are vegetarian. So, of course, in nature, it's not useful to care about your prey. It's only useful to care about your own species. But what if there's competition? What if there's competition between people of your own species for resources? Because what if there's limited food or there's limited mates and you have to compete with others of your own species in order to get those resources? Then being selfish is really useful. And usually resources are limited. Technically speaking, fighting someone else rather than caring for them in order to get their resources, in order to get more territory, more food for yourself or your children, just making sure that you get the resources means that you'll be the one to survive and your genes will live on, because that's the only thing that matters in nature, is do your genes keep existing or not? Because if you die but your child is still alive, they might still have the exact same traits that you had. It's all about those traits that kept existing. So the trait of good or the trait of evil, why did they both come to be and why did they keep existing? So when it's about competition, you shouldn't empathize with the other person. You should just make sure that you're the one who gets the resources and you're the one who survives. And you're not the one giving everything away to someone else and then dying. So selfishness in nature generally is pretty useful. So it's not weird to see that in humans at all. I could give a few examples in nature of selfishness where, for example, you would think that because your siblings have similar genes to your genes, you should support them. But that's not the case if really one of your siblings is threatening your own survival. So, for example, birds pushing their siblings out of the nest because they want to get all the food from their parents, so that they can survive. Or something that happens with lions a lot. There are male lions. I know lion technically is a male lion, otherwise it's like a lioness. But just to be clear, male lions will kill cubs when they are not their own cubs. So kill your own species. You might think that that's not necessarily a good thing to kill your own species, but he will kill them because he knows they are not his, so they don't share his genes. And if he kills them, that means he might be able to mate with the lioness, because she won't be able to mate if she's still nursing her cubs. So if he kills the cubs, then she can't be nursing them anymore, and then he might be able to mate with her, and otherwise he might have to wait for a long time and not be able to have cubs of his own. So that's why that happens, and why being selfish and not caring, about these cubs can be really helpful for your own genes to stay alive. Same thing with people, like if you know you're stronger than someone else, why not take their resources away and take them for yourself? When people would colonize places, they would want a certain piece of land, but there were already people living there. They would just kill these native people, or they would enslave them, use them, and take their resources, take their land, take their stuff, use them to work for them. If you do that, you're successful. If you do that, you're the one with all the resources. Using others, stealing, cheating, lying, they can be useful tactics or strategies to help your own survival. But, of course, we also have to explain why good exists in people and animals, depending on the species, of course. First of all, of course, it seems obvious that you don't want to be fighting, you don't want to be hurting your own close relatives. Because if you kill all of your offspring, then that's the end of your genes. You do want as much offspring as possible over your lifetime who are also doing well. So if you are too selfish, too aggressive, and you don't share anything with anyone, your children might just end up dying because you're not helping them. And at the same time, what if you lived in a group? There are a lot of species living in groups, and people like to form groups. And it's not going to be a very functional group if everyone always fights with each other and no one really works together, or no one helps one another. So group living really means that people cannot be too selfish. And it's really useful to live in groups. You can work together to find resources, work together to defend territory, to raise children, and be there for someone else when they are in need. What happens is that in people, empathy is something that has evolved, where it really improves communication. If you're living in a group and you want to be successful, you want to work together and communicate successfully, then empathy is very useful. It means that you instantly know how someone else is feeling. You might even feel sad when someone else is feeling sad and want to help them, so that there are better social relationships between the people in the group. So that's why, empathy has evolved. And now there's this thing called, altruism, where altruism is basically helping someone else when it doesn't help you at all in any way. Biologists used to think that altruism is only useful when you're helping your own relatives, because when you do that, you are still increasing your own fitness, your own survival in some way, because they share your genes. So helping them, even if it is bad for you, might still in the end be useful. But altruism, when you're not helping relatives or when it's a huge cost to yourself, is something that's more difficult to understand why it evolves. And altruism is also something that also is seen in nature. For example, especially when you look at insects, like I know there are some insects who would literally commit suicide to help the group, basically. Which is really interesting. I found one paper that had a really interesting and clear view on this, where they were talking about the evolution of altruism versus selfishness. And they were talking about how, if you're looking at individuals, who is more successful than the other, who has a better chance of survival compared to another person, that's called selection on the individual level. So when you're looking at the individual level, it's better to be selfish, because Imagine you're living in a group and it's filled with selfish people. You're the only one who wants to help others. And what happens then is that you will be giving things to them and you will get nothing back from them. They will just betray you. So if everyone is selfish, then it's best to also be selfish. So then you might be wondering, like, why do people help others when they're not directly related to them? But apparently, when we're looking at group selection, so when you're looking at one group, compared to another group, which of the groups is going to do better? Which of the groups is going to survive? That's group selection. And when we're looking at that, apparently it's actually better to be altruistic. It's better to be helping other people at the cost of your own success. Here I have a drawing for that. Imagine these are two groups, and these little circles are individuals within the group. We're looking at this selfish group. So all the black circles represent a selfish individual, and this white circle represents an altruistic individual. So what happens in a selfish group is if someone in a selfish group is altruistic, like I said, on the individual level, that's not a good thing. If you're living in a selfish group, you're going to be less successful than the others. But when you're looking at this group, an altruistic group of people who are all giving to each other and helping each other, if there happens to somebody decides to be selfish, a selfish individual appears in this group, then they can still survive, because what they'll be doing is they'll be using these people's help and they'll give nothing back. So they'll still be surviving because they're just using these people. So you would think that in the end selfishness would win, right? But technically at the group level, an altruistic group would do better. This group will be a better functioning group. Imagine a scenario where you're going to try to get food. And the idea is, well, if you work together, you can get a whole lot of food, but you have to trust the other person that they're going to share it with you. Then a selfish person would just not take that risk because they expect the other person to be selfish too. And they will just be okay with less food. But altruistic people, they will know for sure that the other person is going to help them because they know that they're not going to be betrayed. And as a group, they're going to function a lot better because they're all working together, they're all helping each other, and they might be more successful, has a better chance of surviving and becoming bigger than this group. And that, according to this paper, was one of the reasons why altruism can keep existing. So yeah, those are just a few general explanations for the evolution of both selfishness and altruism, or like good and evil, basically. I think it is true that both being good and being evil can be good survival strategies depending on the circumstance. So that was all for this philosophical question. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.